an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Dark, Season 1, Episode 5, Truths. In this episode, so many things, but mostly what I'm concerned about is the fact that I was right about Mikkel. I was right. Now, I don't know how much I should really dance around feeling good about myself, even though I really want to, because this was kind of obvious, right? Like, most of you probably picked up on this also, I'm guessing, but I'm still going to be super smug. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everybody. I am Natasha. Huge thank you to Jill for commissioning this episode. I am just dying because I'm gonna look on the Airtable right now and double check exactly when the next episode is. But I just want to tear through this show so bad. And I have actually been resisting the urge to get Owen to watch the first episodes because I want to rewatch it with him before it's time to start on the so this is the last episode I am covering until September 6th. So I am going to the first week in September, I am going to rewatch the first 5 episodes with Owen. And that way I am prepared to jump back into episode 6. And then after that, not until October 15th. So if anybody else I'm not sure if another one has been commissioned since then and this hasn't been updated yet. But I just wanted to let you all know to keep an eye out for slots opening so that if you are interested in making sure that Dark doesn't wind up getting dragged out too long and that there aren't too many gaps, you are going to want to help out Jill, who started off these commissions. And you can go to unspoiledpodcast.com/shop. So yeah, anyway, I just wanted to alert all of you guys about that because I know that getting slots has been really tricky. I opened it up for 3 months instead of just 2 months, for being able to pre-book, but I sold really quickly again. So the best thing to do is every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday, new slots tend to open up. So if I am looking like I'm totally booked, it is just until the next slot opens in a couple of days, because the way the booking thing goes is, I won't get into it. I don't want to take up too much time, but just letting you all know, because I know that a lot of you are feeling pressure that I need to watch these close enough together to remember everything. So I'm trying to let you know I will do my best, but I also will need you guys to stay on top of commissioning these if that's super important, because I won't be able to go back and rewatch everything every single time. So anyway, episode 5 called Truths. There's some irony to that being what this episode is called, because truths, first of all, they can be subjective. Second of all, they can change. Third of all, it's asking a lot to try and get the truth from some people about certain things. So there's also times where we don't want the truth, really. Truth is just a really loaded word. We start off this episode with a bit of a montage between some different characters. First of all, we have Charlotte, and she is staring at the sort of conspiracy theory board that she has made for herself, where she is trying to figure out the connection between all of these different things that seem like they have something to do with one another, but she can't quite put her finger on what's going on. And she is standing next to the cop from 1986 who does not like Ulrich, And he's looking at photos of dead sheep, which Charlotte has not yet come across, but she may. We might just not have heard about it yet. And then we go to Hannah, who is just, I had said before that I obviously underestimated exactly how obsessed with Ulrich she was, because I really wanted it to be something that she just got involved with once her husband died, and that she was lonely and Ulrich just happened to be there, and he's a very attractive guy and Hannah is attractive, and they just sort of, but it became clear once I saw the past that she has been very into him for a very long time. However, I still thought of it as, oh, this is a long time crush. And once I see this episode, it becomes clear that this is an obsession and that she needs help. Like, this is a woman that really needs to get some therapy and possibly medication, because she is obsessing over him in a way that I have only heard of leading to a bunny being in a pot on the stove when somebody gets home. Like, this is just not normal behavior. And the whole way she decides to handle this throughout this episode is banana pants. So we see first her as a child, and she's like making a scrapbook about Ulrich. Like, I don't know if this is just her putting some stuff into her journal or what, but whatever the case, like, it's a lot. And in the present, she is pressing call to him again. And it's clear from the look on her face and the way that she's sitting on her bed that she has been obsessing over whether or not he's going to pick up, and has been probably calling him repeatedly over and over again. And we find out later just how repeatedly. And then we see Inez, and she in the past is looking in at Mikkel, and in the present is looking at the book I Am Not Afraid, which we get a hint later on when we see Mikkel looking at this book himself. It's all becoming more and more obvious. In the past, we see Ulrich, and he is sitting at the bus stop, and Hannah rolls up on her bike, and they're chatting. And in the present, he is sitting on his son's bed, seeing his phone ringing and ignoring her call. Keeping up with the ignoring people's calls trend, we have Jonas, who gets a call from Martha and ignores her call as well. And I really enjoy little bits of realism. Like, Jonas's phone is covered in a webbing of cracks. And there are moments like that I really enjoy in TV, where they really make an effort to make people's property look like something that is theirs and that has marks of wear on it and is being like cared for in a way that character would. So finding out that he has a phone that's damaged like this and that he hasn't fixed, it can mean either that he just doesn't care that much. It could mean that he doesn't have the money to do it. It could mean that he's super careless and has done this a few times and there's no point getting it fixed because he knows he's just going to break it again. There's all kinds of things that could mean. And I like little hints and clues being dropped like that along the way, And he is laying in bed looking at this red noose knot that was left on his bike and just, sort of thinking about it and obviously trying to figure out what it is. Meanwhile, Bartos is trying to call Martha himself, and she is ignoring his calls as Jonas is ignoring her calls. Nobody wants to talk to anybody. I feel a little bad for Bartos in a way because he is the one that's the most on the outside here. Jonas lost his father, and we know later, based on everything that we find out, that his father's death is related to what is going on right now. Jonas doesn't know that. So that doesn't feel like a connection between the two of them at the moment. But he does know grief. And Martha is obviously going through some shit with her brother being missing like this. And it's really tragic to find out that I'm right, that Mikkel is Michael, because that means Mikkel never comes home. And that sucks. I hate it. Like, I know that's the point, right? That's part of the point of the story. But like, can you imagine that? Can you imagine going back in time, nobody knowing who you are, your parents are alive, but they're young and they have no idea anything about you and they don't care about you. And they're also kind of assholes. And you are not only like just the simple aspects of family and all of that, but then you are also thrust into an era that doesn't have any of the technology that you're used to. And like, as an adult who grew up in that weird spot in the 90s and early 2000s, between when technology really took off and when it wasn't really a thing, I am somebody who, as much as I would absolutely hate it, going back to not having much technology wouldn't be totally unfamiliar to me. It would certainly take adjusting because I am obviously used to having it now. But I still can remember what it was like when you would have to have somebody call your house and hang up because you weren't allowed to talk to them and they had to signal you. There was no texting. Or you would have to pick up the phone line and check and see if somebody was using dial up and whether or not you could call your friend. Or just, basically getting lost because you had no GPS and you were using a map that didn't have the right, there's all kinds of stuff that I can still remember happening because I didn't have technology at the time. Somebody like poor Mikko, who is a child in 2019, is going to be so at sea, it's just going to be such a huge adjustment for a kid of that age. And I really, I wonder, because, I was talking about how Jonas's phone is broken and maybe that means that he doesn't have the money for it. One would think that if you were Mikko in 2019 and you went back in time to 1986, that as you grew up, you would start to invest in companies that had a lot of future to them. You would invest in Google, you would invest in Apple, all of that kind of thing. That's assuming that you have the money to invest. But we don't really see any evidence that his father took advantage of his knowledge of the future. And I would love to know if that never happened and why not, because I would 100%. That would be the only perk, right? You get brought back in time against your will with nobody familiar. The only advantage that you have is knowing things like that. And Mikkel was old enough to know brand names and know, what companies are successful and which ones are not. So there's not a good reason why he shouldn't be doing that. And I want him to fucking get something out of this horrible situation. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. So we have the missing Yasin, I think is how you say it. Yasin is Elizabeth's friend. And poor Charlotte has to tell Elizabeth that Yasin vanished as well. And this little girl's acting is pretty damn good. She just acts she's upset for sure, but she's also confused, and not understanding how this could have happened. And her mother asks her, she pulls out the watch and she's like, the man who gave you this, can you describe him for me? What did he look like? And her daughter kind of isn't really very responsive. And Charlotte has to really push her to get her to answer her questions. But I don't feel like it's unfair. This is a serious situation. Her daughter is old enough that she needs to understand how serious this is. She has to get it. And she is the only person who has seen someone that we know is actually connected to this in some way. May not necessarily be the one that's actually abducting people, but there's something going on for sure. I don't feel like Peter takes Charlotte aside a second later and it's just like, what are you doing? She's a child. You can't talk to her like that. And I'm like, no. Yes, you can. Kids are kids and that's fine. And I totally respect that you can't just treat kids like adults. I really do get that. But people very much underestimate what kids can handle sometimes. And this is the kind of thing that I don't think Elizabeth is reticent to talk to her mother about this because she doesn't have the information or she doesn't know. She's still sort of reeling from the shock of finding out that something happened to Yasin. And we don't really have time for that. We just don't. And she has to get that and understand that. And if it takes hurting her feelings a little bit, I mean, if it keeps another kid from getting taken, oh well, kind of, you know, like, so, and I appreciate that Charlotte is focused enough to push through her daughter being like, no, I don't know anything. And just being like, no, tell me what he looked like. And she gets a sketch artist in, and they get a sketch of Noah, and it's not terribly inaccurate, actually. I'm not sure how helpful it is, because I have had white guy blindness on the show pretty severely right from the beginning. And I have to say that when they post the drawing of Noah, he just looks like any other white guy to me. I don't know. I have a real problem with that in terms of, like, there's a lot of little moments in various TV shows where they have somebody like stand next to the police drawing of them, and you're really supposed to be like, oh, that's them. But I often do not feel like it looks like the person, and I'm just like, is it? Am I supposed to get that? Because I could look at that drawing and then look up around the room and not put it together that this is supposed to be that guy. However, when I see a TV show with a certain character actor and I spot that character actor in something else, I'm like, oh, he played such and such in the other one. You remember that episode with such a... So it's like, it's not that I don't have a good face memory. It's that the face and like, and the distinct features that are usually like focused on in these drawings don't make sense to me. And the facial features that I tend to focus on are like the slope of the jaw or how close together someone's eyes are. And on this show, so many people look really similar in that respect. It's getting much better. I'm really starting to, but there have definitely been moments that I'm like, wait. So anyway, this is when Charlotte gets in her husband's face about the fact that he was not where he says he was. And like his story changed again here too, because when she asked him how long he was at the office last time, I'm pretty sure he said 10, up until 10 p.m. And this time he says up until 11 p.m. So like every time she talks to him, he says a different thing. And she has this photo evidence of him being out in his car at like 9:30, I think is supposed to be the time. And she tells him, I don't even want to know where you were or what you were doing or with whom, but I want you to look into my eyes right now and assure me you have nothing to do with all of this. And he finally looks at her and says, you're crazy, and walks away. He says, you're nuts. And like, honestly, what does he think he's accomplishing by saying that? Peter, buddy, what are you doing? Do you want her to report you? Like, I want to know what Charlotte is going to do here, because it feels like she's going to continue to look into things on her own, but I kind of want her to arrest him and call his bluff a little bit. And yet, the fact that they are staying together, despite the fact that they have no relationship anymore, to me points to the fact that they are very concerned with what the neighborhood thinks of them. And I don't know that she would be willing to do something that could potentially humiliate her family like that. I want to think that she cares enough about these kids that are going missing that she's willing to shelve her family pride for the sake of these, the potential of catching whoever's doing this, even if it is her husband. But we all know that that's not often how like loyalty and familial feeling works, unfortunately. It would be great if it was, but so much of the time we just deny that somebody that we care about could be involved in something really terrible. So I want really bad for her to decide that she's going to, this is the one lead that she really has, you know. I want her so much to decide to pursue that. But I don't know if she's got the spine for it. And I'm going to say it baldly like that. That is going to take courage. She's going to have to be willing to humiliate her own family, to upset her children. That's a lot, you know? Her children are going to have to forever know mom thought dad was capable of this. And if it turns out she's wrong, is that better or worse than if she turned out to be right? What will that do to the way her family looks at her? It's a lot. It's a huge step to take. And as much as I want her to do it and kind of call his bluff and get him to tell her the truth about what's going on with him, I don't feel like Peter is involved with taking these kids. I really don't. But he's clearly up to something. And I have no idea what that looks like. What is it? That bunker there, it felt like it could definitely be like a door in there could lead to the place that we saw Eric being contained. But at the same time, when we went down there with her, with Charlotte, I didn't see any other door down there. It looked like that room, one room that she was in was kind of it. I don't know. And I don't we saw him parked outside that cabin. So we know for sure that was where he was when he was upset and crying and everything. He's definitely trying to cover his tracks when he finds the red dirt in the bottom of his car. He obviously is trying to hide that he was here. But I don't know what it feels like he has to be having an affair, but he's so upset, and he's upset specifically listening to the news reports later about the disappearance of Eric and Mikko. So that feels like there's something related that if he isn't actually directly responsible for kidnapping, he was with someone or saw something that could help, that would put him at this location where if he confesses that he saw this thing, he has to tell her he's having an affair, or he has to tell her something else humiliating, and he's apparently not ready to do that. That's all I can think. I know I'm really fascinated by that particular mystery. So we go to Mikko, who is sitting with Inez, and she winds up getting told later by a social worker, basically, that if they can't find out who he is or who his parents are, he's going to wind up being put into the system. And we find out later that Inez winds up adopting him. That's how they wind up handling this whole thing. It's a lot, Inez is a pretty great person for doing that. I mean, who knows what would have happened to this poor kid otherwise, But I'm jumping ahead on there. We go to the stranger, and he is standing in front of this, huge wall full of drawings and illustrations and everything. And I have to say this, guys. This wall is so silly. There are all of these symbols and legends and mythological illustrations or copies of wall art and frescoes and pictures of wormholes and how they're supposed to. And I cannot help but think this guy is purposely leaving all of this stuff here so that somebody else finds it. Because I can't imagine that anything on this wall is particularly helpful to him. It just doesn't feel like any of this, once you are doing what it seems like he is doing, any of this would be very meaningful. I mean, there are certain things that underneath one of the, the credenza, there's huge blocks of text printed out that look like they're from specific books. There's pages that have clearly been ripped out of a book. There's things like that. So those I could see being, but then just the drawing of the wormhole, that's nothing, that really isn't anything. So I can't help but feel that this is all supposed to be for someone else's benefit. And I don't know whose. I made a joke before about how he must not have he must have put do not disturb on his door, because anybody who goes into this room is going to be what the fuck happened in here? He's only been in there a couple of days and he has the walls completely covered. And I wonder he like says he is leaving, but he isn't checking out. Regina kind of gets this like terrified look on her face for a second where, you know, she's, I think, worried she's losing her only customer at the moment. And he says that he wants to keep the room because he's going to be coming back. And she says that won't be a problem. And I think he isn't coming back. I think either someone else is going to be taking that spot in that room, or a different version of him is coming back, but not him, like not this one, or something. But I think all of this is being left for someone else to find. I don't know. But anyway, so let's go to Bartos. He is trying to call Martha, and he winds up getting a phone call from Eric's phone, the one that's locked, that has only one passcode left that he can try in order to unlock it. And he gets the call, and the dude knows exactly who he is and says, "I'm Noah." And I was like, oh snap, what? And it turns out that this is supposedly Eric's dealer. And Noah agrees to meet up with this guy. And he makes a deal with Jonas that Jonas will come with him. And Jonas agrees initially, even though he's obviously not too psyched about it. But then he winds up bailing in order to go to a performance, like I don't even know if this is supposed to be like a talent show or what. But he goes to some like soliloquy monologue thing that Martha is doing. And he asks her, like, why have you been calling me instead of Bartos? And she doesn't say anything, but they just wind up making out. And, you know, it's pretty clear, obviously, she still had feelings for him. He confesses to her that he wasn't away in France, that he got hospitalized. And, you know, I had thought she knew the truth about that, but apparently not. So I'm very curious what Bartos is going to say about all of this. But it's, you know, I mean, I feel like Bartos basically swooped in while Jonas was gone in the fucking hospital and stole his girlfriend. So I don't really have a lot of sympathy for Bartos on this one. I kind of feel like you had her for temporary and you had to have known that. And if you didn't know that, then you were just being a total dick and you deserve what you get. But anyway, all right, let's back it up and talk about Hannah. Do we have to? Hannah, what are you doing? Hannah, you dumb bitch. What the fuck is the matter with you? Get a hold of yourself, woman. This loopy fucking cunt decides that she is going to bake a casserole and use that as a pretense for coming over to Ulrich's house. And she basically forces her way inside. Like, she stands there awkwardly in the rain until his wife invites her in. This bitch, no. And I'm super mad at Ulrich because he is given the best window that he is ever going to get, the opportunity to tell his wife the truth. And I really feel that at this point, she would not have really given that much of a shit. Their son is gone, right? So if Ulrich was like, listen, all right, I was cheating on you. I fucked up and I'm really sorry, but I am never going to do that again. This losing our son has made me realize that I have been taking everything for granted. I am back 100% in this marriage and we're going to go through this together. I feel like if he had said that and handled it that way, he would have wound up all right. Not to say that there wouldn't have been a schism between him and his wife for a minute, that there wasn't going to be shit to work through. Of course there was. But I think they would have gotten past it. Instead, this motherfucker decides to double down on his story that he never did anything when it's absolutely insultingly obvious that he definitely did do something. And I'm just grossed out by him, you know? Like, I everybody makes stupid, terrible mistakes. You know, I essentially cheated on my ex-husband with Owen. I hadn't even met Owen, but I was like involved with Owen before splitting up with my ex-husband. We had agreed to a divorce by then, but I was still living with it. It was just a weird situation. And so I have a lot of sympathy for people who have these like transitions that are not totally on the up and up. But that's not what's going on here. He has like, it feels like this is a long running thing that has been going on with him and Hannah. And there has been nothing but signals that he should have picked up on that Hannah is obsessed with him. And he is just using her and then acting like he gets to walk away. And that's not to say that I subscribe to her little fucking monologue, because she comes into the house like she is sitting in the living room with the man's motherfucking wife when he comes out of the shower. Like, I mean, it's just, this is seriously some Fatal Attraction shit. Just trying to let him know, like, oh, if you aren't going to pick up the phone, I'll find a way to be part of your life. Never fear. And she asks for a ride. And what is his wife's name again? I have already forgotten it. But his wife, I think, knows precisely what's going on here. And when she asks for a ride, I feel like his wife is like, yes, absolutely, Ulrich can give you a ride. Because she knows that Ulrich is no longer interested. And that's probably what this woman is doing here. And that obviously Ulrich is trying to ghost her. So I'm going to tell her, yeah, he'll give you a ride so that y'all have the opportunity to be alone together and he can dump you, because that's obviously what needs to happen. Like, I really feel like his wife knows all of this, because context, if you suspect your man's cheating on you, which she clearly did from the first episode, she found a hair on his jacket. It smelled like somebody else. She has had suspicions. If you suspect that, and then a woman shows up at your door that everybody has known is a little obsessed with him, and don't even try and tell me people didn't know, because fucking Hannah as a child was not subtle, right? Everybody had to have known. So if this woman who had had a childhood crush, after you think your husband is cheating on you, shows up at your door and tries to act like she has something for you, even though y'all have never been good friends, and then is, oh, where's your husband? Oh, he's in the shower? Oh, really? Oh, can I get a ride? You know what's happening here. And context has to tell you that this woman is showing up here in this way, in a way that she never has before, because something has changed. And the thing that has probably changed since your family has been visited by a terrible tragedy is likely that he has stopped answering her calls. I feel like this is just... Oh, thank you. Alice says Katharina. Katharina, this woman ain't no fool. And I'm really mad at Ulrich for not telling her the truth at the end. Because, like, you are never going to get a better opening than that. And she says to him straight up, you're getting one chance. And if you lie to me, fuck you. And I think that she is going to stick to that. I think when she inevitably finds out that he was cheating on her, because she will find out, absolutely will, he is going to get dumped on his ass. And he could have had the opportunity to stay together if he had just done this here, but he didn't. So anyway, that whole conversation that he has in the car, because, you know, Katharina insists that he take this bitch with him to town. Hannah says something to Katharina, if you need anything, call me. And Katharina sort of straightens up and looks at Ulrich in this way as they leave. That I'm just like, that line, if you need anything, call me, I feel like really got to her for whatever reason. But she lets her husband leave with this woman, and then they have this talk in the car. And she says, is that what you think I am? Some damn affair? It's not just something you can switch off. I can't. And neither can you. And she is very insistent on the fact that there is more between them than what he wants to be there. Now, here's the thing. I don't want to even say there's not. Because I don't think that they would still be hooking up after all this time. And I really think this has been going on a while. If there was nothing between them. But what's between them doesn't necessarily have to be deep. You know, you can, like, I think that's the thing that so many people mistake for significance, is the length of time that you have been having on and off again relationship with someone. All that it means, if you've been going on and off again with somebody for a long time, is that you both cannot fix your bad patterns. Straight up, if you guys are not together, if you have to sneak around and be weird about it, if both of you are kind of unhappy in general about the situation and fight frequently or God knows what, and yet you still insist on being connected somehow when there's really no reason. It's not like they have kids together. There's nothing holding them to one another. That means that you guys both just consistently keep making the same bad decision over and over. That's all it is. Like, there doesn't need to be a bigger meaning behind this. And Hannah thinks there is because she has an obsession. She's not in love with Ulrich. She has assigned some sort of meaning to him as a person that is more than human. And he is larger than life for her, for whatever reason, and represents something that she wants, that she can't have and will never have. And she thinks that being the side chick, I think she really believes eventually she will supplant Katerina. Which anybody could look at his family and know that's never going to happen. Even if Katerina dumps him, he is not going to be with Hannah. That is not how that works. Hannah is an embarrassment to him. That's how I feel about it. Like, that's what I'm reading on his face. And if he was single and Hannah was interested, Hannah is now the reason that his wife dumped him, which I maintain his wife will find out, and that will be what happens. And you can't continue on with a relationship with somebody that didn't really mean that much to you to begin with, and then wound up costing you everything that you cared about. I don't see it. I don't feature it. So I just think that this moment is just so hard to watch. It's just really embarrassing because Hannah is seriously like trying to get him to confess his love to her. And he has not said it in all this time. You tell him you love him all the time, and it's very obvious that he has never said it back to you. I don't know why you think that now is the time that's going to happen. But he opens the car door and leans over in this way that she clearly thinks he's going to kiss her. And instead, he opens the door and tells her, what I need is for you to get out and leave me alone and not call me again. And I don't want to see you again. And she continues to sit there until he screams, get out. And she says, I'm not going to just let you go. And she stands there staring after him in this way. And we have a flashback to her walking with Ulrich in the hall, obviously just loving every second of her time with him. And then he immediately sort of drops her to go and hang out with Katerina. And the two of them start holding hands, and she sees from afar that there is something going on between the two of them. And eventually, this leads to a whole thing. We see him and Katerina. Oh, and by the way, it says no future on the back of his jacket, which was the graffiti that was being cleaned off in front of the nuclear power plant. So I don't know if he's the one that's like vandalizing things, or if No Future is supposed to be the name of a band, or what's going on there. But whatever the case, I just wanted to let you all know that I noticed that, even if I don't know what it means yet. So she's watching him like go off and hold this girl's hand. And for most of us, it would be pretty clear, like, you know, he is like 1.5 feet taller than Hannah. And it's obvious that Katerina is closer to his own age, that Katerina is going to be sexually active sooner. I mean, not that probably Hannah wouldn't have agreed to be sexually active if he asked her to, but it seems very obvious to me that this Ulrich is looking at Hannah as a little girl, not as a potential partner. He doesn't see that for them at all. And we see him and Katerina talking about having sex later. And it's a kind of a funny scene because he's saying, "Are you sure? We don't have to if you don't want to." And they're both smoking. And I just can't tell you guys how gross it is to me to watch the both of them smoking and then start making out, because I don't know if you guys have dated a smoker. And if you yourself are a smoker and you kiss somebody else that's a smoker, I would imagine it's still pretty gross. It's probably less terrible. But as a non-smoker, when I dated a smoker, it was like the nastiest. I would like make him go and basically shower. You can't just brush your teeth and brush your tongue and use mouthwash. That smell is all over you. You need to get rid of it. So I couldn't deal with it. And watching them two, talking this over and finally begin to make out is just so awkward. And they do look like teens, you know. I thought that they did a good job casting people who genuinely, I mean, it's clear that they're older, but they look younger than most actors that are cast as high school students, I feel like. So they decide that they're going to hook up, and they decide to do it in one of the rooms in like the basement of the school. Now, I know that this is insane, but it's really the kind of thing that, like, because I was yelling, you know, last episode about, what is her name? Elizabeth's older sister. I forgot. Francesca, right? She and, what's his nuts? They hook up in the locker room at school. And my problem with that was that anybody could walk in at any time. This is an open locker room with tons of people's actual, like, belongings sitting in it. That is so stupid to me. Like, what are you talking about? However, I am not somebody who has a leg to stand on when it comes to having sex at school, period. I had sex with my boyfriend at school at least 10 times because there are many, many places in a big enough school that you can go that there are not going to be teachers coming around. There won't be like custodians or anything coming around. You can get away with that pretty fucking easily. And as far as finding a place to have sex that isn't going to be spotted by anybody else, the only other option you can have is really like someone's car or in the woods. And this place, it's cold and wet most of the time, so the woods do not sound like a good option. And he has a motorbike, not a car, so that's no option. So having sex at school in this case, when they have made sure to choose a room that nobody is going to be in at any point, that makes way, way more sense to me. But anyway, this whole thing, like the two of them, they wind up hooking up, and fucking Hannah sees them. And basically, it's a weird thing because what happens first is she is at the school with her dad, and he has some sort of like textile truck. Her dad is like, can tell something's wrong and is trying very vaguely to just be like, "Hey, is everything okay?" And I kind of liked him, you know, he's like making an effort, but when she says, "Yeah, everything's fine," he just goes, "Good. Okay." Obviously really just doesn't want it to be a problem. He leaves her and she winds up getting out of the car and wandering around because I think they're on school grounds at this point. But at that moment when he gets out, she opens her shirt and looks down, and I realized a little belatedly that she's thinking about how she doesn't have tits yet. And she's kind of wondering if maybe she did, if her and Ulrich would be hooking up instead, which, I mean, I'm not going to lie, maybe if she didn't look quite so much like a kid, maybe he wouldn't see her as a kid. But I have to say, I kind of respect the fact that this Ulrich isn't seeing her that way at all. You know, I appreciate that. So she gets up out of the car and she sees Mikkel sitting there. And she goes up and talks to him and just straight up asks him if she's pretty. And he doesn't answer her, and she seems really like bummed out by it. Meanwhile, Mikkel is opening a present, and it is a book called I Am Not Afraid. And this is the book that we had seen Inez looking at earlier in the episode. So it's really the main clue that he winds up being adopted by her. But him and her little interaction is like kind of adorable in its way, unless you know the context and you know that they wind up together in a kind of unhappy marriage, and then it stops being cute and starts to just be kind of sad. But yeah, she sometimes tries to imagine that she can do magic, is what she tells him. And he asks her if she knows about who Houdini is. And he does a little like magic trick for her, and she thinks that that's very impressive and amazing. So at this point, he leaves, and she gets up and goes to look through the window and sees Ulrich and Katerina hooking up. And what she decides to do is accuse Ulrich of raping Katerina later. And it is incredibly fucked up. Now, here's the thing, everybody. And let's all be brutally honest. He would not have been arrested, right? This would not have happened. Like, first of all, a woman who is covered in bruises can go to the cops and say that she was just raped. And y'all can doubt me all you want, but just check any number of articles and you will find this to be true. Cops would rather accuse a woman of having thrown herself down the stairs to make it look like she was attacked to get back at somebody than they want to admit that she was probably raped. A little girl goes to the cops, tells them that she saw this thing. The only reason that this might work is because the chief of police obviously does not like Ulrich and wants to believe the worst of this kid. But Katerina is the one he's accused of raping, and all she has to say is that it didn't happen. Case closed. Over. Done with. She's the one who was assaulted. She's the one who has to press charges, right? I don't know how the law works in Germany, so I'll grant you that. I don't know how that works. But here in the United States, this would not have worked at all. She would have given him maybe a kind of like questionable reputation by making this accusation. But Ulrich obviously kind of has a questionable reputation anyway. So the whole way that this winds up going down, obviously, Hannah is like just off a rocker. This is a woman who really needs help, who is like claims to love somebody, but was willing to ruin his life because he wasn't with her. That is not love. That is something horrifying and totally other. But aside from that, him being arrested the way that he was just rings false to me completely. Like it just, I don't see it. I am happy to be proven wrong. If any of you know about like the way that laws like this work in Germany, if there is something in place to ensure that he would be taken into custody, we don't see what winds up happening past the point of his arrest. So who knows how long he's actually held? And maybe he gets arrested and they question him and he's released and nothing ever comes of it. One would assume that has to be the case because he winds up being a policeman himself. But just with my unfortunate knowledge of how the world actually tends to work and how little any woman's word, how little credence it is given and how little weight it really holds for most police, I just don't see this being taken seriously at all. So, the only thing, like, and I definitely see that the chief of police, like, hates him and so would want to believe this about him. But nevertheless, if she doesn't want to press charges, then unless she was so afraid of admitting that she voluntarily had sex with him, Katerina, because she was afraid of being labeled a slut, that she decided not to come to his defense because she would rather people think that he raped her than think that she is a slut who actually had sex voluntarily, which, I mean, I could certainly see some women feeling that way, some girls feeling that way, because those kinds of labels, especially in a school and a town this small, are bound to stick. I could understand her being worried about that reputation following her around forever, but I don't feel like that's what happened. And I don't feel like if she had just let that charge stand, that they would have wound up married. So, we'll see. But just that's the one part of this that I was just kind of like, I don't know. But what it does do is illustrate for us just how far Hannah is willing to go, even from a young child. And if that was what she was willing to do then, what the fuck is she willing to do now? And has she been doing something to, for example, secretly taking photos of him or the two of them together, or taking video of them together when he comes over and hooks up with her so that she can blackmail him with it? Has she been like keeping keepsakes or messages or something like that? And is she going to blow up his life and send them all to his wife? Like, I feel like telling his wife is honestly the least damage. It would blow up his life, but I feel like if she was willing to get him accused of rape, that's a level of malice that just telling his wife doesn't equal. And I'm worried about what she could fucking cook up if she chose, So anyway, I got my eye on you, Hannah, and you're a messy bitch and you need to go find somebody to talk to and get some fucking medicine. So let's talk about fucking Noah. Because this dude is sinister. We actually heard somebody talk about him. I'm pretty sure this was a guy he was referencing. When that farmer's sheep all died, and he's talking to the chief of police about it, and he says something about the end times coming. And the cop is just like, I didn't know that you were religious. And he says something about how, like, we got a new priest or a new pastor or something. He's a good man. And I think this is who he was talking about. So Noah comes and sits down next to Mikhail in the hospital and tells him who he is. And they have a little bit of a debate here. Now, I have mentioned before that I really love how this show uses sound. That I really love the intensity of the cave in particular and the way everything echoes. However, in this scene and in another one later, they overdo it a little bit with the sinister background music, and I have to ask whoever was in charge of the score to just chill a little bit, please. Because I get that this is supposed to be a bad dude. Y'all have set up Noah all last episode. We get it. This guy is involved with these kids disappearing. He's obviously like somehow traveling through time and or immortal or God knows what. Because we see him later and he's the exact same age. I get it. You guys, you don't need to have this like boom, 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 boom. Holy shit. No, I get it. I promise. Okay. Chill. But anyway, he sits down and starts talking to him and asks him if he believes in God. Mikhail says no, that he thinks it was created by the Big Bang. And this dude's, the usual argument. Well, maybe the Big Bang was God, like the same whole thing. And under this whole conversation is this fucking music. And Mikhail says that his father says religion is something invented to like dupe people. And this guy graciously says, it's good that he raised you to question things, but every now and then, it's good to question those who question things. Which isn't, on its surface, a terrible assessment. And he says God has a plan for every human being, even you. And that scene winds up ending. Now, obviously, this guy's alarming. But this music, I just can't get past it, really. So, all right, we have Jonas, and he is sitting and he's looking at his father's grave. And the stranger who had been staying in that hotel room just pops up next to him. And you see Jonas look around like, where the hell did you come from? Because this dude made no sound until he just like was right there. And he tells Jonas, I used to know your father, actually. And he saved my life. Because Jonas for a second is like, do I know you? And he's like, no. It says, it was a long time ago, but I remember him well. He saved my life back then, but I only understood that much later. Life is a labyrinth. Some people wander around their whole lives looking for a way out, but there's only one path, and it leads you ever deeper. You don't understand it until you've reached the center. And this dude says all of this, and then he looks at Jonas. Death is incomprehensible, but you can make peace with it. And then he fucking just leaves. Till then, you should ask yourself each day if you've made the right decisions. That's right. And then he just leaves. Now, I know I've said it before, and I'm going to say it again. I think that dude is Jonas from the future coming to talk to present Jonas. That's my theory. I'm just going to go with it, all right? Everybody just shut up. Shh. I'm just going to say that, okay? That's what I'm going to put it out there that on the record, official theory, all right? But when he says, your father saved my life, and I didn't understand it till much later, there was something about that line that made me feel like that was Jonas. I don't know. So he had given a package before he left the hotel to Regina for her to deliver, right? And before we actually see that package arrive, we see the whole scene with Jonas going to Martha and watching her with her, monologue and everything. And then we have, what is his name? The guy that that Martha has been dating. He is getting into the car with Noah. And we see that Noah looks essentially the same as he always has. So this dude hasn't aged for some reason. And he eventually stops and lets him out of the car. I'm seeing all these comments. Sorry, guys. Locker rooms tend to smell. Oh, that's true. The only way it makes sense to me is if Egon was looking for a reason to arrest him. Yeah, I just... but I went over that already. And I had a bad feeling about this guy as soon as you started talking to Mikkel. Kristen, could it have been the fact that the music went that tipped you off? Because holy shit. I can't wait for you to keep watching this series. Bartosz, thank you. Yes. Bartosz winds up getting dropped off. And we don't really see what went down between him and Noah. He gets in the car, but then he gets let out. And I don't know what's the deal is with them, it's a weird scene where all that we see is Noah sitting there with his hand on a Bible and moving his hat out of the way so that Bartosz can get in the car. But as far as what's going on between the two of them, no idea. So, he has this close up on his hand at one point that I thought was going to show us some kind of scar or something. Nothing. I don't know what's going on when they let Bartosz out of the car or any of that. But then we see the stranger walking back into the cave. And this is part of why I think that he's not going to be the one that comes back for that hotel room. But Jonas comes home and he finds that box sitting on his bed. I have no idea what this is. I made a joke in the group when I was watching this episode that like maybe he's the White Lantern now. But it's this like weird sort of orb thing with a like meter reader with it. It looks almost like a light reader that you would use for like photography or something. It's not a perfect orb. It's got like a handle on the bottom. And when he runs his hand over it, it lights up. And I wonder if this is meant to be used when exploring the cave, if that's supposed to be what this is partially for. But it's pretty cool looking. Like, I really like the design of it. It looks like it's supposed to be more of like a 360 flashlight rather than the flashlight that just shines one beam straight ahead, that this gives you much more full coverage, like sight. And then in there is the letter that was left to not be opened until such and such date. And this letter is like tattered. This is obviously not the same copy that Inez was reading earlier. And it reveals to him that, yes, indeed, his father, Michael, was Mikkel. And I felt very smug, let me tell you. By the time you read this, everything will have happened and can no longer be changed. And we see, as he's reading this, his Inez going to his grave and leaving the I Am Not Afraid book on his grave. I am super curious why Michael felt he had to kill himself. I want to know so much what it was that made him feel that this was the only option available to him for whatever reason. I just can't imagine what he, like, if he thought his death was going to somehow keep Jonas safe. I don't know, because I'm going off of, again, the assumption that that stranger was Jonas. So when he says, he saved my life, but I didn't see that until much later, I feel like his father killing himself somehow did something to save him. But I don't know what that means. Mikkel became Michael, who never knew where he belonged, which is just awful, you know? And how weird to find out that your own father was the kid that you were running in the woods with who disappeared. You know, like, that's just, oh, what a mind fuck that is. And, you know, I don't know at all. I cannot tell, as Jonas is reading this, whether or not he actually believes it or not. I am hoping that he does, because I feel like maybe it's like crazy enough that why would my father leave this note? And why would he kill himself and leave this note if it weren't? I feel like the gravity of it being a suicide note is the only thing that would really carry it over to, oh my God, this must be true. Or why would he lie about it, kind of thing, you know? That's all I can think. So the stranger, I forgot about this. We see him going into the clockmaker's shop, and he has that like big suitcase with him. And it's the clockmaker that we had seen in that video that one time. And he says, I would like to talk to you about time. So my mistake, I had said that he went back to the cave, but I think we saw him silhouetted in the cave for a second, or else we saw somebody else in the cave coming out of it. I thought it was him. Because it's just a really, really brief, it's after Bartosz gets out of the car, and is standing there watching Noah drive away, that we see just a really quick flash of the stranger coming out of the cave with that suitcase. So I don't know. Maybe this is him coming back from another time. Maybe he is... Oh, maybe he is in another time. Maybe when we see him come out with that suitcase and going to this guy and talking about how I want to talk to you about time, maybe that's like in the past or something. Maybe he just traveled. Guys, I don't know what to think. There's so much happening. But it ends with, I want to talk to you about time, and that is the end of the episode. So, it's going to be a while until the next one, guys. My apologies. But, I plan on going and watching the next one right away because it has not been commissioned as a voyeur episode, so I know it's safe to do. But I am just, it's going to kill me to not be able to watch this for that long. It's going to be terrible. So, I am just really glad that this was commissioned. Thank you so much, Jill, for commissioning this. I really, really appreciate it. I love the design too. I love all of the theories. Oh, good. This is so fun watching. I'm watching along unspoiled. Oh, Kristen, you're going to have to wait a while. I'm sorry. But, hopefully it'll be worth it in the end. And yeah, I know that Rashawn has just been like bouncing off the walls since she found out that I was covering this. She's very excited. So that speaks well for it also. All right, guys. Well, thank you all again so much for hanging out with me and feeding me names and whatnot and helping me out. And again, thank you to Jill for commissioning this whole thing. And I will be seeing you again eventually with a new episode. Toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.